When we approach the Old Testament, do you seek to understand it, or do you just read it? Well, we're into the New Testament, and I don't have to really understand things from the Old Testament. Why even study the Old Testament? And Jerry, you're in Leviticus too long. And I understand all of that. But one of the interesting things of going through Leviticus, especially haven't been there for a long time, is that I forget the things that I have read and studied. And I have to restudy them. I have notes, but I have to review them to see if I'm at the right place. I think we need to seek understanding of every book of the Bible. It is God's Word. It puts us in the context of people of old. I realize that we are Christians and not Jews. But what we find is here's God's way of instructing them of what they must do. They had to understand it. And I want to work with them. I want to know what God gave me to know, not just read. Dan, is that your hand? Okay.
Yes. When people talk about that versus where the New Testament versus the Old, I'm reminded of something I came to the realization a few years ago. Everything in the Old Testament tells you the nature of God. While the law may have changed, the nature of God has not.
That's right. And the things that he says sometimes is because I'm saying it. And we may not understand all the details about it. How come my land in a village outside of a walled city is going to be different in the day of Jubilee? Why is that? Why can people redeem my house in the village and not this wall, not the house in the walled city? Why is that? I don't know. Okay, let's move on. We're not going to move on tonight. That's what makes chapter 25 very difficult, because we're seeking to understand it. It's the last chapter in this lesson number 11. But we've already got into that in chapters 24, and then we come into chapter 25, and we'll be skipping around in this chapter to get the concept. And that may be what makes it difficult. All of a sudden we get a hold of the seventh year and what's happening there, and then all of a sudden we got the Jubilee. 7 times 7, 49. Oh, the next year, that'd be the 8th year. How does that work together with every 7 years? I don't know. Who knows? Let's read on. Let's go someplace else in our Bible to study. I want us to stay there until we get it. Now, I may not get it, but I wouldn't set this forth if I didn't have an answer for you to consider, because it's labor intensive. It's not daily Bible reading and I'll just go on to another chapter. It's trying to understand what was the year of Jubilee. What was the 7th year? What took place there? And so we ask this question because it gets us in our chapter 25. Every 7th year, a Jew would grow up knowing this, understanding this. And I want us to at least understand it, even though it may be a little difficult, because the wording, it just doesn't fit right when you first read it sometime. It didn't me. So I say that as a challenge. I say that as an encouragement, because you may have tried real hard to finish up this lesson number 11. You may have spent all night last night and all day today doing that. And you may have done that. And I praise you for that. You've got somebody else that's right there with you, because you want to understand it. And that's not something that's just for other people. Why should it be for every person that once you've gone through here, that one day that you'll come back to it, you might remember some of the things that you worked so hard to understand. So what happened every 7th year, the people, what did they do to the land? And be more specific. Okay, they lay dormant. It would be fallow, as we see in the book of Exodus. That means there's no what? There's no sowing, there's no reaping. It's fallow. It may be plowed, but there's no plowing to sow seed? It wasn't because it's plowed up and left alone. What's happening? I want to understand that. It means no seeds being planted and no harvest is being set forth, and yet I can take that for food. God, what are you doing? Verse 6, the Sabbath of the land shall be for food for you, for thee and thy servant, and thy maid, and thy hired servant, and a stranger sojourn with thee, thy cattle, and it shall be all, for them shall all the increase thereof be for food. I thought you said I couldn't harvest it. And it's, in this text, it's for food for everybody but me. But verse 12 says, ye shall eat the increase thereof out of the field. I thought I was to leave it alone. Well, you have a wrong concept. So we have a lot of things going. What about food for me? Well, it's food for me, but I can't harvest it. So I have to make a distinction between the idea of sowing and reaping, because usually when I'm thinking of reaping, I'm going to eat it. But reaping may be for economic gain. Sowing may be to have something I can sell in the market. It wasn't going to be for that, because I am going to leave the corners of my property, and I will not glean those. I will not be preparing in the seventh year. I will not be preparing those things as far as harvest. See, there's a difference between planting and harvesting for increase, and yet I could still have it for food, because it would come up. Land left alone, it would come up, and there would be enough food for me and my servants and my cattle. I got a question about that. So did the Israelites. Come with me to Leviticus, the 25th chapter. And notice in verse 20, if ye shall say, what shall we eat the seventh year? Behold, we shall not sow, neither gather in our increase. So what are we going to eat? Then I will command my blessing upon you in the 6th year, and it shall bring forth fruit for how many years? I thought it's supposed to lay dormant for a year, and then, okay, it takes a year to get it. That's 2 years. 3 years? Some of you are smart, but some of us have to think that one through. And you won't be eating that till the 9th year. I will give you enough food on the 6th year when you gather it to last you till you eat the harvest of the 9th year. Something's got to be. Where are you going to count the days of your year? Too much information, I don't want to know. Let's move on. No, we're not moving on. When are you going to have to, by this passage, to understand these combinations? How are you going to determine when the year began? Because see, we're going to inject now the year of Jubilee. Verse 8, thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee 7 times 7 years. How much is that? 49. We could do, microphone in the street, and a lot of people today don't even know how to multiply. I've seen it. 56, 64. Did you get 49? Good. But then we got to count what happens next. We got to count the next year, and that's what year is that? 49 plus 1 equals what? 50. And that's the year of what? Jubilee. And when will that trumpet be sounded in verse 9 for the year of Jubilee? It will be on the 10th day of the 7th month. And the solution to it is that you don't count your year from April, which was their beginning of their years. You're into October, November, the days of harvest. And so you're preparing for the Sabbath of the 7th year when at the harvest of the 6th year. From the harvest of the 6th year, that autumn, until the 9th year, when you get to eat the harvest that you planted on the 8th year, that's 3 years. It would have to be, you would not be plowing that for 2 years. Harmonizes all of the passages in the Bible about the land resting on the 7th year. And yet it's something that you won't work if you start April. But see, that's the beauty. It was, the people were used, they had to grow their own food. They just didn't go down to H-E-B and hope they had good sales on. They planted and they reaped. And that was their livelihood, and that was also their food. And spending time with the text, you begin to gather that richness that should be a desire as we study the Bible, whether it's old or whether it's new. New has less emphasis about our salvation. And I realized, I don't have to know this, but why don't you know it? Why don't you want to know it? Why wouldn't you want something that's going to not be contradictory? And I'd forgotten if I knew it. I never thought, well, they're not going to be eating things or from what they're sowing and reaping those 2 years. God will take care of them in the sixth year, and that's when they begin to not sow. So they don't reap in the 7th year, and they don't sow in the 7th year. So when they will reap in the 8th year, which happens to be the year of Jubilee, where all the laws, this law would come into being. I know why it's all together now. It's not jumbled at all. That 8th year would be the 8th year. You're not eating that, and you are eating old store that God blessed us richly in the 6th year. You get to eat it on the 9th year. That 9th year of harvest, because you planted it on the 8th year. And to me, it's worth knowing, because this is how God wanted his agrarian people to operate in the days of the old covenant. They took care of the poor. And this whole idea of Jubilee, we'll talk about it in a few moments, that it's how God took care of his people, how God took care of the sojourner, how God took care of the slaves, how God took care of poor people. There was indeed that safety net below the people that indeed, this is what we have. We don't have an outside source. You know, the days of Joseph in Egypt are over. We may not have that, so we get our food from our land, and that land becomes important. Was the promised land divided up in tribes? It certainly was. And that tribe, that's why the ownership, the male, the children, that's why that was so important, because this is our possession. What about the Levites? They had no possession. But he's going to talk about them in this text. And some of the things that you could do with somebody else's land and somebody else's house, you can't do with the Levites. And the whole reason being is that they never had a possession. And when you read the text with the Levites, if you bought a house of a Levite in the city of the Levites, you better just understand that you repurchase land you already had, because it's going out free. On Jubilee, it's going out free. Because the Levite never had any possession. I don't have to buy it. It goes back to the Levite free. Because that's how God provided for him. So going out, it becomes a phrase. It means go out free. I don't have to redeem. I don't have to buy that. And when I do, knowing here's the years of Jubilee coming, and that's going to determine how much it's valued. With a Levite, you got to realize it's going back to him free. Of course, that's every 50 years. It's reset. But that was God's mind, his wisdom, and I think it's great. I think it's wonderful how he took care of all the interesting the Levites who didn't have a possession. They served in the tabernacle of God. They did his service. We've learned in Leviticus. That's what makes it holy. You know, holy. It's most holy unto God, and yet the priests are eating it all the time. Why? It's most holy to him and to his people that he's authorized to eat it. And all the context, it is most holy unto the Lord. You just rest assured, because that is in a context of helping someone else in the tabernacle service. It's most holy to him and the servants who serve him directly for you, the people. That's a concept we get. And all the sacrifices we've tried to emphasize that points out to Jesus. So I realize this is difficult, and you just jumbles up, and a lot of times we don't make those distinctions. And we don't have those concepts. And the idea, I'm not eating for three years. Well, you're eating old store because he's going to bless you in the 6th year. But when does that happen? You start preparing for the 7th year and the autumn of the 6th year. And that's why we come into the 9th year, where then you can eat. Well, eat, yeah, the week before that, you go down the store and go buy it. No. The autumn, when we're supposed to sow, we've sold in the 8th year, and now it's available. See, we're not thinking in terms of going down to the store and just getting off the shelf. We're talking about people of Israel. And this is how wonderful God prepared them. So every 7th year, what would the people do to the land? Well, they let it life follow. They would not sow, they would not reap, but there's a story with that. It's worth knowing. It's worth knowing. And we could add a lot more to it. But any questions about every 7th year? The land, here in this context, is going to be, it's going to be a Sabbath rest unto God. Well, that's because he'll keep the weeds from growing. It will refurbish the earth. It'll produce fruit better than it has been. No, because it's Sabbath rest unto the Lord. He rested. We're to rest on the 7th day, and your land is to rest. And there's some blessings with that. But it's because God said so. And that happens so many times in our life today. If we'll just follow his commands, we'll have happy families, we'll have happy churches, we'll have happy individuals who are busy serving one another. And it is just a wonderful wisdom of God. But we've got to get into it and understand, here's what it's about. I'll follow his commands. But there's indeed blessings that come from that. All right? When did the year of Jubilee occur? Well, we've already opened that up, so when is it? See if I did any good. Thank you, Corey. The 50th. What's the definition of Jubilee? The Greek word is yabel. That'll help you. No, if you pronounced it right, it would. Maybe so. How many of you think, well, that's jubilant? I'm happy. And that's not what the word means. That's what the word's connected with. But what did it mean? Who cares? I do. God used a term. You don't hear it, the year of Jubilee. I mean, the day of Nehemiah, the feast day of tabernacles, which happened every year, was a day of rejoicing. And they fouled that one up. They need to understand it's joy. The joy of the Lord is your strength. Don't worship me in the day of the tabernacles, feast of time, and be unhappy. It's a day of harvest. It's a day that we ought to be happy, and you're tied in when you were captured in Babylon and all the difficulties you went through. The strength, your strength lies in the joy of the Lord. And so we need to understand root being, what does it mean? It means to sound forth. I wonder why that would be. So it's a day of happiness, and we'll know that. And let's just see why would that be in Scripture of day of happiness, that idea of Jubilee. Turn with me to Ezekiel. Ezekiel 46 and verse 17. Let's just mark down points that we'll get a concept, and we want to make sure we have all of God, what God says on the subject. But this will nail down the point that's so much consistent. And when I say, well, you shouldn't think about I'm full of jubilation, that's why it's Jubilee. That might be a good connection, a word, and there's nothing wrong with understanding that joy is connected with that, because we see in chapter 46:17 where it's a day of what? Liberty. And this is Ezekiel with the people of his day. They're already in captivity that he set forth. Did I get the wrong verse? He gave up of his inheritance a gift to one of his servants. It shall be his to the year of what? My Bible says liberty. What does your Bible say? Liberty? Okay, freedom, liberty. As far as inheritance, it shall be for his sons. His inheritance, his sons, it'll be given back to possession. You're learning about that in Ezekiel. You've learned it back here in Leviticus, and you're moving on. And you know it is a year of liberty, because people are going to be freed from being bondservants. They're going to be having their possessions given back. That's true. But that's not what the word means. And what you do, you begin to look at what happens on this year of Jubilee. I find it here in Leviticus 25. And let's begin with verse 8. Thou shalt number 7 Sabbaths. The years 7 times 7 years. That's 49. There shall be unto thee the days of 7 Sabbaths of years, even 49 years. And then shall you send abroad the loud trumpet on the 10th day of the 7th month. There you're in that month of harvest. In the day of atonement. That's the day of atonement. We've studied about that. Back there in Leviticus 16, we've dealt with that. We know what that meant. We're studying Hebrews. We understand the connection. Got that day. He shall send abroad the trumpet throughout all your land, and you shall hallow the what year? The 50th. And proclaim liberty. Ezekiel, you got it right. God's inspired word gets it right. Do you get it right? It's a day, I could say, liberty. But what is happening on that day? When it occurred, it was indeed the 50th day. Principally, what 3 things happened that year? And I want to start with the first that deals with the definition of the term. And you may not know this. I didn't. Until I cared about Jubilee. I'll just say it's a happy time. No. I want to know exactly what that word meant. And it opens up so much knowledge that I didn't know I had. I didn't, because I learned it. I've gotten things from elsewhere, but things kind of come together. What have I just read is blown throughout all the land? Trumpets. Blowing of the trumpet. That's what it means. It means to sound forth. How is he sounding forth the 50th year? Happiness, happiness, happiness. It's connected. But what's sounding forth is trumpet. What is the place of trumpets with God? What happened in Exodus 19 when they're about to get the law? They blow the trumpet because God's ready to meet them in the mountain. Yeah, there'll be some blessings that come from that. We're going to get a law, and we're going to get freedom. It's a jubilation day. That was a very sobering day. When God blows trumpets, You're coming into his presence. You're gathering for a very holy reason. You're gathering for a reason that God is authorized. And the blowing of trumpets is that I'm meeting you on the mountain. Show up. You can't touch the mountain. And that's when you read that back in Exodus 19. You can't touch it. You die. I'm there. But blow the trumpet because I'm ready to meet you in the mountain. What's going to happen when Jesus comes back again in 1 Thessalonians 4? No. Why? I'm calling a gathering. And what do we sing? When the trumpet of the Lord shall sound, and time shall be no more. And what's the rest of that song about? I'll be there. I'll be there when the roll is called. That's what trumpets meant. Hey, beautiful music. No. It's meeting the Lord with his blessings. That's what's beautiful about it. Why are they blowing trumpets for the year of Jubilee? That's what the word meant. And there were some things connected with that you could rejoice in. And it's a resetting of the clock for the poor person. It's bringing things back together every 50 years. There's a reset. And that was God's plan. So one of the things that happened was the definition of the word Jubilee. They blew the trumpets. What's the second thing that happened? Well, verse 13. In this year of Jubilee, ye shall return every man unto his possession. If thou sell aught unto thy neighbor, or buy of thy neighbor's hand, you're not going to do him wrong, because you're going to determine things, but how far are we away from Jubilee? Because what happens on the year of Jubilee? They get it free. It goes back to him. And so the closer you got to Jubilee, the less valuable they're going to pay you for that land. Don't do them wrong. The further you're away from 50 years, Jubilee, the more that land's worth. They'll pay you that. Is that not what we're learning here? Don't wrong one another. According to the number of years after the Jubilee, thou shalt buy of thy neighbor, and according unto the number of years of the crops, he shall sell them unto thee. You got 49 years? This will be, you can get the crops. Every 7th year is going to be a resting. God's going to bless you the 6th year. My land's worth a lot. According to the multitude of the years, thou shalt increase the price of the land thereof, and according to the fewness of the years, thou shalt diminish the price thereof. There's the concept. There's what makes it fair. Because you're living in this idea of God has come down and this is his law. He wants you to pay attention. He blew trumpets for this year. And therefore, it's something you're always looking at, and you're not going to wrong your brother in that regard. It's going to be determining how valuable your land is and how much it's not worth if I'm going to have to give it back to you. That makes sense on the day of Jubilee. Well, it makes sense to me in capitalism. We're not there. We want to get us back, and how God's fairness was there, and how this text says, this is why he's bringing it up now. You shall not wrong one another, verse 17, but thou shalt fear thy God. I am Jehovah your God. It's about me, not your little ways of doing things. Why does he bring that up in the text? Because that's what he's driving at. And when you understand that, Leviticus is not boring. It's rich. It's rich. And all of a sudden, why is that 7th year resting of the land? Why did you tie that in with Jubilee? That's just so confusing, because Jubilee was tied into the 7th land of rest, the 7th year of the land resting. It was the 8th year. What's happening then? He's explained it to you, and he's taken care of your argument. And well, I'm not going to have enough food. I'll bless you. I'm God. So they would go back to their possessions. And so he talks about in verses 18 through 22, this little problem. How do I not have enough food to eat? As we can't plant, we can't harvest, can't plant, can't harvest for those 2 years. And Jubilee comes along on the 9th. So he's taking care of that. Now we pick it up. Here's a third reason. Got the trumpet sound. That's what Jubilee means. Sound forth a sound. And yet it's such a wonderful message of it all. You're not going to wrong one another. You're going to sell and buy on the basis how far away are we from Jubilee? 50th year. Because it's all going back to the person that sold it. The land shall not be sold in perpetuity. What does that mean? It won't be forever. You don't know me. It's in my will, and I'll go to who I want to. No. It's Jubilee's coming. He'll go back. Because why? Do you ever ask yourself the question, why? Why does he say that here? Because the land belongs to whom? God, not you. And you wonder where we get the idea of stewardship? The Jews knew that real well. It's my land. Land is mine, for you're strangers and sojourners with me. And what you have, the sojourner and the stranger with me, is going to profit from it as well. We're all in this together. But the land is mine. It belongs to the people. They're stewards of that. But also about the sojourn. No, I'm an Israelite, and they're just passing through. Don't you know that's a difference? Yeah, there's a difference. But you're going to treat them fairly. You're not going to wrong them. And so here's what's going to happen. Look at these 3 points. You see 3 points there? No, I just see Bible reading. In all the land of your possessions, ye shall grant redemption for the land. All right. If your brother wax poor and sell some of his possession, so he had to sell it to get money because he got poor, what would his kinsman be allowed to do in redeeming that land for their brother? They could do that, couldn't they? His kinsman, next unto him, shall redeem that which his brother has sold. So I might have some rich relatives, and they may get that land back to me, and they'll pay the price, but why will it be a fair price? It'll be based upon how far away from Jubilee we are. But if you got poor, and you had somebody that could stand for you and do that, that's what would happen. Well, here's the next scenario. If a man have no one to redeem it, and he be waxed rich, and find sufficient to redeem it, then he'll reckon the years of the sale thereof and restore the overplus unto the man to whom he sold it, and he shall return unto his possession. You're going to do it anyway on Jubilee, but I kind of came into some money. I was poor, but I don't have a near kinsman, but I can buy my own land now. Could you do that? Yes. You could have it and have his possession. Point 3. But if he not be able to get it back for himself, and that which he hath sold shall remain in the hand of him that hath bought it, that be fair, it shall in the year of what? Dun-dun-dun-dun, trumpets are blowing, and that's going to be my year. The year of Jubilee, it shall go out, that he may return his possession. It shall go out free, is the concept. I don't have to pay a dime. It'll be mine. Now, can you wait on your inheritance for 50 years? No way. I'm not going to wait that long to get mine. Yeah, I can wait that long. But it's always going to be, the clock's going to be reset. So here's the going back to your possession. It is idea of blowing of the trumpets. And now what happens next? Because we'll skip down. If thy brother be waxed poor, and his hand fail with thee, thou shalt behold him as a stranger. And we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Verse 39, but if thy brother be waxed poor with thee, and sell himself unto thee, we realize that if that happens, Exodus 21:2, that every 7 years, the slave, the hired servant of the Israelites, will go back and they'll be free. And there was a point where if you didn't want to be free, you liked the master, you had your ear with all to the door post. I'll be his forever. Maybe you thought, I can't wait till be free from the year of Jubilee, and I don't want to be free. I've got a better deal now than I'll ever have on my own. I think I'll be your servant forever. Why didn't Leviticus talk about that? Because that's not included. It's the point is what happens when you're going to be free. So it's the day of liberty where people go back to the possessions. People go back from their being a hired servant and the blowing of the trumpet. And the trumpet sound is the fact I'm meeting you in the mountain. And we look at it as a New Testament Christian. I'm meeting you in the judgment. And when he calls my name, I'll be there. Because why? The trumpet sounded. Have you ever thought about that connected with the year of Jubilee? I haven't. I do now. Because I took time to know what the definition of the term actually meant in the beginning. And why God is blowing trumpets. And there's other times they blow it, but it's the idea of gathering and rousing people to enter. I hear that horn. It's time to do something. And it would be the year of Jubilee we're talking about. All right. Could a Hebrew sell himself out as a slave to his brethren? How many say yes? How many say no? So you have to know there's a difference between a slave and a hired servant? That's right. And why cannot an Israelite be a slave? He hired himself out, so in that sense he's under slavery. That's why I say the word. Yes, the answer is yes. But he's not a bondservant. He's hired servant. He's a servant serving him, but there's the idea I'm submitting myself to his will. That's slavery. In the purest sense of the word, I'm going under his guidance or his, what is this? I'm hiring myself out to him. But he's going to be taken care of. But a bondservant, what did the Israelites suffer in Egypt? Because he brings this in the text. Our time is shortened, but he brings this in the text. You will not be, no Israelite will be a bondservant. If I said bondservant there, that'd be fine. But I just wanted slave because we won't have a discussion. I did. And to make the distinction, you got to think. You got to be able to make a distinction there, and you made that. Because in the text we got him. So, but let's just see. Are we ready for this one? If thy brother be waxed poor, verse 35, and his hand fall with thee, then thou shalt behold him as a stranger, and a sojourner shall he live with thee. You'll take no interest of him or increase. But fear thy God, that thy brother may live with thee. What's that? Brother so-and-so's going to live with Kathy and me for a while. We're going to open our home to a brother. Not going to pay a dime. Well, you got to pay his keep. Maybe mow the yard. Nope. Didn't say that. Got to earn his keep. No, I'm taking care of him because he's a brother. Now, he may want to do some things, and I'm not taking that out. But there's the point. Are we ready for that? But if he hires himself out, he may not be able to work. But if he hires himself out, verse 30, if he waxed poor, so verse 35 he waxed poor, and verse 39 he waxed poor. Well, what's the difference? Read it and then understand it. Or is it just going to be daily Bible reading? Thy brother be waxed poor with thee, and sell himself, and thou shalt not make him serve as a bondservant, as a hired servant. He shall serve thee unto the year of what? We're back to Jubilee. Why did he bring it up again? He just took care of it. Because it all had a setting, because he's going to be let loose and go free. Verse 42, for they are not servants whom I have brought forth out of the land of Egypt. They shall not be sold as bondmen, but they're going to be hired servants, but they're not bondmen. Thou shalt not rule over him with rigor. Isn't that what Pharaoh did and the Egyptians? But shalt fear thy God. And as for thy bondmen and thy bondmaids, whom thou shalt have of the nations that are round about you of them, shall ye buy bondmen and bondmaids? He said, I don't like that. I don't like slavery, God. He just allowed the Israelites to have them. And here's the thing. They may always be in their family. Thomas Jefferson had slaves, and therefore he's a bad person. Israelites had slaves. They would buy the sojourner, and they would have them forever, and they'd be handed down to their generations. That's what the Bible said. Does that mean God liked slavery of 18? No. A lot of difference. Wasn't any idea of a race idea, just of non-Jew. And that's the way it was. They would be serving their master, and they may do that for a lifetime. And they're going to be their own possession. They're part of their own household. They become their own family. That's why in the New Testament we have their households could involve slaves, because that's what had happened here. Not that God condones slavery, and that we would not condone. And that doesn't give the right for the Southerners to believe that the Bible teaches it's okay to have slaves in their day and time. It's not, but I'm not going to be unfair with the Bible, and not to be ashamed of it. So we'll start there. We'll get into chapter 26, which is lesson 12. Our next question will be, how were the release of land and hired servants carried out equitably? And we'll hit on that again, and we'll continue on. I hope you enjoy this study as much as I have.